Hi, I'm Susan Glenister, standing by the Fraser River at Maple Ridge, about an hour from Vancouver. Just below me is where the Kanaka Creek enters the Fraser. In the fall, salmon that were born in this creek come home after spending 4 years in the ocean to complete their life cycle. A few thousand salmon will swim up Kanaka Creek over the next few weeks to spawn, before their life comes to an end. The best place to watch these fish is in the shallow waters of the creek, where they splash and thrash around searching for a place to spawn. A large number of these salmon were hatched at the Belle Irvin Fish Hatchery, where John Heaven is the manager. Last May, John gave us a very interesting tour around the hatchery and described the life cycle of the salmon. Beyond the fish fence you can see the creek water just full with coho waiting patiently for their turn to jump up the lower creek falls. It's breathtaking to watch these magnificent fish jump against the tremendous force of the waterfall, and if it's not successful, they'll try and try again. Today we're meeting John at the fish fence with his volunteer students and watch them catch the broodstock from which the eggs and the milt are extracted. Later we'll see the eggs being fertilized and counted before being transferred to the incubation chambers where they begin to hatch. Now let's watch as John Heaven shows us how another generation of salmon are produced at the Belle Irvin Fish Hatchery.
We're down at the fish fence on Lower Kanaka Creek, some 8 to 10 k's downstream of the hatchery, and we're collecting broodstock in the fish fence trap, and they're Chum Salmon currently swimming in, and we're transporting them up in the tank behind me on the truck to the hatchery to use as broodstock for an egg take this morning, and then we're emptying the rest of the trap of fish into the upstream side of the fence so that they can swim on upstream and spawn in their natural area further up. We've been counting fish. We've let through about 75 fish this morning, and to date, since the beginning of October, we've got a run of about 2,500 to 3,000 fish in the creek. So when the fish arrive at the fish fence, we can catch them in the trap and grade them, sort them out, decide which ones we want to bring up to the hatchery, which ones we can release on upstream to spawn, and the students from the local high school give me a hand and net them out, load them on the truck. We take up about 15 fish and then we bring them up to the hatchery here.
So what sort of sex is that one?
This is a male chum.
So John, that was interesting at the fish fence with the students. So what are we up to now?
Well, what we're doing now is we brought the broodstock up from the fence, and the students are going to help unload them. We're going to unload them out of the back of the tank on the truck one at a time, and we're going to sort them into males, females, put them in their respective tanks. So we got them separated, and then we'll go ahead and start our egg take.
Great.
We're standing beside the female tank, the chum females, and we have to pull those out, and we have to basically kill them, and we try and do that in the most quickest humane way possible. So we grab the fish by the tail once we've netted her out of the tank, and we use these nice little, I don't know what you call them, billy clubs if you like, and you've got to give her three good whacks on the head. And the important thing to remember is she needs to be hit on the head, not halfway up her back, not miss her and hit yourself on the knee because you probably break it in the process, and preferably not hit anybody else with these when you're swinging. And once the fish has been given 3 good whacks on the head, then we stick a finger in the gills and give a quick twist, and this breaks the gills, which is the main bloodline circuit in the fish, and she'll start to bleed because we need to get rid of all the blood in the body So we have to cut these fish open to get the eggs out of her tummy, and if we haven't done that bleeding process, then we're going to get blood mixed in with the eggs and they become worthless to try and fertilize them. So that's the process we're in right now. And then a little bit after that, once we've got all the girls hanging, the female chum hanging on the bleed rack, then we'll get the guys out and we dispatch them in the same manner, trying to do it as quickly as possible. And the males don't need to be bled because we're not cutting them open. A little bit later on we just use a bit of pressure on their tums and get them to give us some milk to fertilize the eggs with.
I just want to warn you that the next scene may be disturbing to some viewers. It shows 2 female salmon being killed humanely before their eggs are taken out.
Good and hard, hold it hard. I'm trying. Okay, ready? Yeah. Now what do I do? That's it. The male, that's right. It's going to try. Come on, open up. Right on the head.
Oh, I did it!
Just starts spraying blood like a mo.
We've got the female chum hanging on the bleed rack now, and I've just hosed them off to clean them off a little bit. And what we're going to do next is to dry them down, to make sure there isn't any water dripping off them. And we're going to get paper towel, and we're going to wrap the paper towel around their gills, because when we come to cut these fish open, we've actually got to hold them head up with the tail down. And if we've got blood dripping from the gills down towards the tail, the chances are that when we're holding the fish over the bucket, the eggs are going to drop into. Some of this blood could drop down into the bucket, and if we get too much blood mixed in with the eggs, we pretty much start to affect how well those eggs are going to get fertilized. And it's very important that we try not to do that and have clean eggs going in there, so that when we add the milk and the water, fertilization is close to 100% as we can get. If we get water mixed in with the eggs, then the eggs are going to become water hardened, and it doesn't matter how rich the milk is, you're never going to fertilize them.
Isn't that how fish lay eggs in the water?
Yes, but when fish lay eggs in the water, the female and male let each other know that she's about to drop eggs, and as she lets the eggs go, he sprays them with milk, and it's all instantaneous.
Oh, okay.
Now, because we're not quite as clever as that, as humans, what we need to do is take the eggs separately and then the milk separately. We mix the eggs and the milk, stir it together, and then add water, and it's that water being added that will fertilize the eggs. If we get water in the milk when we're taking the milk out, then that becomes null and void. So what we have to do here is get a couple of bits of paper towel and just open the gill cage with the tummy facing you, because you want it to come round the bottom, and then just tuck it round underneath the fins there. Dorsal fins, and you'll see why in a second. The other side though, round the back like this, rather than round the head, round the tummy.
There's white stuff all over.
That one.
Well done, that's good.
Is this one?
I like to see a bunch of stuff there.
Okay, we've now got our females already dried off, and we're going to start our egg take. So I'm going to get the students to pick one female up at a time and bring it over to the collecting station here, and we'll start our egg take. But when you do pick the fish up, you've got to remember one thing, is you're going to have to turn the fish upside down, in other words tail down. So you're going to hold the fish around this way, and if you keep tipping and you're not paying attention, you can start dropping all the eggs out. Alright, this girl's ready to go, and it's pointless you standing here in line. I know, it's pointless standing here in line with your tail hanging down and you suddenly look down and go, oh, look at all these eggs. Okay, so when you've got the fish, and you can see I'm quite happy holding the fish like this, and the reason is I've gone right through at the back of the gills here, and I'm actually feeling my thumb and finger together. So there's no way I can drop this.
Around.
When you get to the bucket, whoever's sitting on the stool you're doing a joint little teamwork here. it's a good idea for the person sitting on the stool to have some paper towel with him or her, and just to give the fish a little bit of a wipe down. And it's up to the guy or girl who's holding the fish as the fish is being cut to say, look out, there's some blood coming. When you cut with the knife, you're going to stick the point in at the vent here. You can't go straight up through. This is very gristly here, so you have to go round. You have to go round one side or the other. So you cut round, come into the middle, and come all the way up to the top. When you've done that, you've got to open the fish, get the fish open, and make sure all the eggs have come down. All right. And while you're making sure the eggs all come down, if there's blood going into the bucket, too much blood, a little bit doesn't matter, but if there's too much coming in, then you've got to take the fish away. All right. So the person holding it's got to be paying attention as well to what's going on.
Okay. Here.
Yep. Just give it a wipe down. Stick the knife in.
Right here.
Yep. And up you go. And tip it back towards you a little bit, the knife. Then just pull up.
I've got a wrong angle.
There you go. But you're not right in. You see,
Oh,
you-
no.
you've got to start again. Follow the line you were on. It's quite correct. You just got it. Okay. Well done. Come right on up. No, you've got to come right further up with the cut. Not nearly high enough.
Okay.
Well done. There you go. And then open her up.
I can't touch them though, can I?
Yeah, you can.
Oh,
And you
okay.
see the eggs up the top there.
Yep.
Just
I've got it.
give a little bit of a wiggle to the system. That's fine. And then
Just
just
them, drop them
yeah,
in.
a little bit there. Just scoop those out of the bottom, because that's a bit of a waste down there. Well done. That's good. That's super.
Just let me hold it. This stick one. There you go. In the bottom? There we go. Stick of blood. Yeah, that's okay. Do you want to try cutting it open? No. That's it.
Look, let me show you something. Let me, just sorry, because there's no reason for you not to be able to. And if you don't always make it up, which I did, I thought I hadn't for a second. And then what I was going to say to you, rather than use your fingers, look,
Alright.
if you just shake the fish, you see they're all coming down,
Yep.
and then you just got a few at the bottom. If you open it up, you've done well there, and just go right. That's it. Couple
Okay.
there. Okay.
It's not that easy, isn't it?
There you go.
It's not easy at all.
No fighting now.
I think that's everything. Is that it?
Yeah.
Where am I supposed to give it a jiggle? Oh, watch out for the blood. Back it out.
Just come back out. Particularly, we've got the males ready now, and I'm going to get the students with me to bring individual male up, and we'll squeeze the fish on either side and collect the milt into a small container, and then we can mix the milt and the eggs together to help fertilise the eggs in about half an hour's time. The good idea is to pick them up by the head as you come over, because you see I'm dripping out milt, and the reason for that is that if you walk over holding it by the tail, then all the milt that's in two sacks down the side of the fish here is going to go towards its head, and then you're going to have the struggle once you're ready to get the milt going. You've got to sort of force it all back again. So I often say, pick the fish up by his head as you're walking over, and if you dribble some out, that's no big deal. And then for me, I'm inclined to put him on this leg like this. This hand with the glove on is what's controlling it from sliding on, sliding off. And this hand is what you're using to express the milt out. If you can hook a finger around the anal fin there, and then it's just a case of spraying like this, and if one gets too close, then you get covered. The idea is not to get the cup too close under the fish, because if it's slimy and I drop some slime in, then you're going to get covered. Now, rather than get greedy with this guy, we want to say that's good enough for that cup, because if I get a spot of blood in here, then it's dumped. If I get too close to squeezing down here, we got the bile sac right down the bottom end, and you'll squish that and you squirt a nice pile of green slime in there, and then we've got to dump that. So we'll put that inside on the table. We'll use, and if the fish has produced lots, we'll bring your cup up, and you don't have to come close as you saw. No, well, don't be nervous, because you know, I might. That's good, and we're going to save that. We'll use that. We'll put that in separately, and that's all there is. But
So
I mean,
squeeze from up here.
Yeah, and just apply. The pressure really comes from the hook in your hand, and I don't know if you'd rather do it with a glove on. That's fine. You might get it to work. There you go. And once you start getting it, just keep the pressure on, and you can stop your hand squeezing down. And then if you're getting that much, good. Let's not ruin it.
Blood, chunky blood.
Now you see, sometimes that's because we dropped the fish, hit him too hard,
It's really slimy.
slightly abused him. Poor chap.
Okay, does someone want to hold back the fin
Just
on
wrap
this?
your hand around that.
Yeah.
Your back hand.
If you're clever, you can just get a glove around it as well. There you go. Right.
Oh, it's
That's
just
fine.
going to slide out.
Okay. Yeah, you want to? Yeah, it's better.
Oh, it's on my hand again.
Well, you got underneath it too much. Perfect.
And
Now you see what you've got to judge is: do I keep going or shall I stop?
I keep going for a little bit.
I would stop right there because that's a good.
Okay, wipe down. Someone want to hold the fin back.
Good.
Okay, you ready, Sam?
Okay, don't get too close. Got to let it come out and then keep going, keep going, keep going.
Try it again.
Sure. Don't get too close underneath in case we dribble. Okay.
One more, or
No, couldn't risk it.
Try, go.
should we or no?
Well, sure, be devil. Just go for it. Don't get too close underneath. Don't get, no. Wait for it to, okay, now. Okay, now we've collected all the milt, which is the second stage of our egg take, and what we need to do next is to go inside the building, and we've got our eggs to be volumed and counted, so we can end up with a figure as to how many eggs we've taken, and then we'll mix the milt and the eggs together and water, and we'll do the fertilization. So come on in and we'll do some egg counting. The purpose of what I'm going to do next is to measure each female from each bucket into the measuring jug to get a volume in mils, which will end up with a total volume in mils for all the eggs we do this morning, and then I'll have to do little small 30 ml samples into this little cup and count them out, and then I multiply my sample figure into the total amount of mils, and that will give me the number of eggs we've done today with all the fish. There's quite a variable number of eggs per fish, and basically all we do is just tip them into the jug and read off 700 mils. And having done that, pour them back in the bucket carefully and make a note of it on my form. Okay, what you're going to do for me, grab the bucket and you're going to just tip gently in, and with your better eyesight than mine, you're going to read off that's 800. So yeah, but we always just go to the nearest figure underneath, so that I don't overestimate. So because if I turn around and say I've got 200,000 eggs, and then when they all hatch out, I've only got 150,000 fishes, I get smacked around the head and go, well, what happened to the other 50,000? And I'm going, well, they weren't there. And he said, well, why did you say they weren't? So I always underestimate, and then I got more fish. So I call that 800, and then just tip them gently back in there. And we'll do the next one. And if we can do them in numbered sequence.
And doesn't matter the other eggs in before?
Not, the only time it would matter is if there was a real, try and tip a bit more, that's it. If there was a lot of blood in, then we'd have to clean that off. And then
So
just,
800 again?
yep. Okay, what I'm going to do now is just randomly select a couple of buckets. We do a 30 ml sample, because that's a good figure I can measure out in here. And then we pour sample onto a ice cream lid, and with a counter I just got to do a bit of counting Okay, and then having counted them, we can put them back in the bucket we got them from. And I got 154 eggs in my 30 ml sample, and we can divide that by 30. That'll give me 5.1 eggs per mil, and I'll probably do 2 or 3 more samples like that so that we get an average figure for eggs per mil, and then we can add up my total amount of mils we got from each bucket and multiply by my average sample, 5 or whatever it will turn out to be, and that'll turn around and tell us we've done 20 or 30,000 eggs this morning. What we're going to do now is to mix the mills, which we've collected from the males, with the eggs, and once we've done that we'll stir the milt in with the eggs, and then we need to add water to that concoction, and once we add the water then the eggs start to fertilize, and will be fertilized within, certainly anyway, a minute. Some people say immediately, some people say within 30 seconds, but by the time you've done all these and added water and stirred them up again, they probably sit for a minute or two with water, milt and eggs mixed together, and then we'll take them further up here and rinse them off, clean them out, get rid of any blood that's mixed in when we did our egg take, get rid of the milt, get rid of any broken eggs, and basically just sort of rinse the eggs through, and then they'll go into the incubating system and start the process. Need some quite full containers, but the rest of them, and when you pour it in, just try and do a little bit of a circular motion in there, and then stir the milt up. Once you've poured your milt in, you can give it a bit of a stir. Be fairly gentle, but the idea is to mix everything up.
Draw a happy face. It does. Orange stuff, everybody.
And the other eggs. Is that just because of different fish, or?
Has this one been done?
You'll be able to tell. No, it hasn't. You'll be able to tell because they should have gone a bit frothy with the milk mixed in. So what we're doing now is we've done the milt and the eggs mixed together.
How much water do you want in?
Just enough to cover the eggs. And what we're doing is adding the water and just giving the whole bucket, eggs, milt and water, a little bit of a stir. And hey presto, they're fertilising, the action's happening. And we just leave them like that for, as I said earlier, up to a minute anyway, if one's in a rush. But we could start filling them brim full, and then we'll just rinse them off and clean the buckets out. Yep, that's fine. Quick.
More water in that one? Okay.
So we finished rinsing off our eggs, and now they're all nice and clean. We need to go and put them to bed, and we need to go into the egg room and put them in the vertical incubators and let them progress to their next stage, which is the eyed stage. So follow me through and we'll go into the egg room. I'm pouring these eggs into what we call vertical incubators, and the reason we do this is the water flows up through all the eggs once we've filled it up, and if you get the flow dead right, then the eggs are just fractionally suspended, and it actually stops the fungus getting going too much in some of the dead eggs that we end up with, which we always will have when we're doing an egg take. And they'll stay in here until the eyed stage, which is probably sometime early in December, and then once they've eyed, we'll move them out of these vertical incubators, and they'll go into the proper incubating trays we've got in the incubation room, because we found we can't hatch them in these. The catch here is that once they've been in here for about an hour or so, they swell with overflow if I've got too many in there.
Well, John, it's been 2 months since the egg take. How are the eggs coming along?
They're doing very well, Sue, and we've got quite a lot of eyed eggs now, and we're just beginning to sort through them and try and get rid of some of the dead ones, because we don't want those hanging around infecting the good ones. So why don't we pop inside and I'll show you what's going on.
Great.
Okay. So as you can see, we've got a tray of chum eggs here, and some of the white ones are the dead ones. So we've got a few dead ones to take out, but the rest are well-eyed, and on some of them you might even spot the odd black dot in each egg, which is the eye of the alevin developing. They're quite prominent now, and these eggs will probably hatch in about 10 days to 2 weeks time. So it's about a month later since we've seen the eyed eggs, and we now have some of the chum hatching. So we thought we'd pay another visit back to the building, to the hatchery, and have a look at some of the alevins that we've got. Okay, we have a tray of newly hatched chum alevins. We've got approximately about 5,000 in the tray, and they're now just a little over 3 months old since they were taken as eggs back in late October. And you can see the feed sack that these fish are wriggling around with, little orange, I actually call it a lunch pack with the students when they come in to explain what it is. And they'll gradually use this feed sack up, and it gets smaller and smaller, and by about the beginning of March into the middle of March, these guys will be looking like tiny little fish, tiny little fry, and we'll move them from these trays that they're in now out into a big tank and start feeding them. These alevin have almost used up their feed sack, and they're just about in another week's time ready to be transferred from here into the tank that this whole stack is sitting above, and we'll start feeding them. They get about 10 feeds a day. We've got about 5,000 little guys in here, little chum fry, and I don't know if the camera can pick it up because it's quite difficult to see, but most of the feed sack's been used up. And it's really just a visual look that we give them as we go through this stage, and when I think they're ready to be moved, that's what we'll start doing. Now these chum were taken on the 1st of November, and we're now at the 5 months old age, and they buttoned up. There's almost no feed sack left, yolk sack left, and so we're bringing them out of their incubating trays, which we've got the basket here, and we're basically just ponding them into the tanks to encourage them to start feeding. They need to be fed for about a month, and then towards the end of April we release them into the creek, and they'll swim off down the creek and go and spend a little time in the Fraser River estuary before heading out to sea.
It's now the beginning of May. So far you've seen the eggs that were collected by John Heaven and his students evolve into young fry. These young fry are now ready to be released into Kanaka Creek. This is the start of their journey that takes them under this bridge, down the Fraser and into the ocean, where they live for 4 years before they swim back to Kanaka Creek to complete their life cycle. Now let's go to the Belle Irvin Hatchery and say goodbye to the little fishes.
Okay, we've got the last few chum fry that we should release from our egg takes in October and November, and they've been fed for approximately a month, and we're going to release them into the creek. We'll put one bucket there. We've just got a couple of others we need to get out. And these guys will go pretty quickly down the creek and then vanish out to the Fraser River estuary and stay there for up to 3 to 4 months before they head out to sea and come back in 3 or 4 years' time. So this is the spot we always release our fish into.
They don't want to go. Oh look, there they go.
Okay. Yep.
Oh. It's nice to see them go off, isn't it?
Yeah, go off like that.
Your children.
No, they're not my children. They're the creek's children. Of course, Susie's split. Half have gone one way, half have gone the other.
Oh well, that's good.
Can you see them in the water just in front of you there, Peter? You come down.
Oh yes.
Oh, look at them, they're green.
They probably will catch up with the other,
Yeah.
and they'll darken down the light because of the buckets.
Yeah. Goodbye, chums. Goodbye,
Goodbye,
fishes.
goodbye, fishes. Goodbye,
Swim,
chums.
said the mama fish.
Oh,
Swim.
I'm not singing. I'm sorry. I might scare them if I start singing. So have a good trip. Come back as adults.
Yes, come back and see us.
When we look at the overall survival for fish that come back, we're only looking at maybe 1 or 2% survival overall.